This is Chris with Marabella Commercial Finance. Yeah, this is Chris Marabella, Net Lease TV. I'm here with Mark Levenson. We're at the Law Event, ICSC San Diego. It's Friday, October 25th, and we're talking about letters of credit, security deposits, and guarantees for commercial real estate properties. So, Mark, when would a landlord want to go reach out and get a letter of credit, and why?
Okay, well, a letter of credit is one of three separate areas or items that the landlord is going to look to as security from a tenant so that it would be comfortable leasing its premises to that tenant. You can have a retail store, you can have an office building, you can have a triple net lease, you can have a grocery store, you can have any sort of real estate that you can imagine. Okay. The landlord, the owner of that property, is going to want to make sure that if it is entering into a lease with an individual.
And let me stop you there. We're not talking about like Starbucks, Home Depot, Walgreens, CVS. We're maybe talking about a credit that isn't publicly traded.
Well,
you're trying to enhance the credit, right?
Correct. You're right with one small exception.
There's a caveat to that.
Right.
Okay.
If Starbucks wants to put San Diego Starbucks LLC, which is a single purpose entity, onto a lease, then the landlord's going to say, okay, then I want a guarantee.
If you have the zirconia and you don't have the diamond, is when you'd want this credit enhancement, this letter of credit.
Right.
I got you.
Well, in a case like a Starbucks or an Amazon, etc., you want the Starbucks Amazon entity that has
the strong balance sheet in the bond rating, or a guarantee.
Correct. Okay. And if they want to, for whatever reason, they want to put up an LLC, maybe there's a state with some crazy rules, they don't want to have the parent on the hook there, they don't want the parent doing business, then you can accept a single purpose entity, but you're going to want to know that there's an Amazon or Starbucks or
somebody behind it.
Yeah, as a guarantor. So guarantees one vehicle, letter of credit is another vehicle, security deposit is a third vehicle.
Economically, how much am I going to pay for a letter of credit? Does it make economic sense?
Well, wait. Wait, hold it.
Got to ask you the difficult questions, buddy.
It's not a difficult question.
All right.
The tenant is the one that bears the cost of the letter of credit. Now, if you're dealing, again, I don't want to spend too much time on the Amazons and American Expresses and Starbucks of the world. If a landlord requires a letter of credit from them, and there are reasons we don't have time to go through in this interview, there are circumstances where a landlord will require a letter of credit from those entities. There may be government entities that are involved, there may be ground leases involved. If you have a letter of credit from an entity with a strong balance sheet, they can get a letter of credit for 2 to 3%. So
the tenant gets the letter of credit, not the landlord.
No, the landlord's a beneficiary of it.
So the landlord goes to the tenant and says, you know, your credit's okay, but my lender or whatever, I don't really feel comfortable based on after looking at this entity's balance sheet. Mr. Tenant, will you go out and get a letter of credit?
Well, it's not.
Is that how it would work?
It's not. Will you? If you want,
we can't make this deal.
You got three choices. You give me a letter of credit, which is frankly a clean letter of credit that's renewable annually. You give me a cash security deposit, and there are bankruptcy implications to some of these. I'm not sure we're going to get into in this discussion. You give me a cash security deposit, or you give me a guarantee from someone that my lender or I deem as creditworthy. I need one of those three things, unless you have such a strong balance sheet that the...
Where do I get these letter credits? Who does them?
You go to your favorite bank.
And they do them.
Yeah, but I don't want to know that you got a bank that is a real bank. So I prefer, if I'm a landlord, I want a money center bank. I don't want the bank with 3 branches that may not be here.
Right.
Okay, but you got to get a letter of credit. And if you're a startup or if you're an entity without great credit, the bank may say to you, we'll give you a letter of credit, but since we, the bank, are now on the hook, you may have to put up 50% cash to secure that letter of credit. You may have to put up 75 or 80%. There's no free lunch in this stuff.
You're saying the tenant would put up that money?
The tenant would have to put up.
So as a landlord, what should I be analyzing in the letter of credit? What should I ask the tenant for to make sure that it's a solvent letter of credit, whoever's issuing that. Like
well, there are standard forms of letter. It's a standby letter of credit. There are standard forms that banks use, and you want a money center bank or
like
a well-known
Chase bank, Wells Fargo.
Right. If I'm living in San Diego, and San Diego Credit Union has 50 branches and has been here for 100 years, I may take a letter of credit from them. If I don't know San Diego Credit Union from a hole in the wall, I'm going to want one of the big money center banks.
So let's say that I got a property, it's $3 million at a 6 cap. The rent's, the NOI is $180,000. It's a 15-year lease, but the credit's no good.
Right.
I'm bringing in 180 triple net. How much it's going to cost me to get this letter, or the tenant pays for it?
No, the tenant pays for the letter
They're
credit.
They're going to pay for it.
They're going to pay for it, and it depends, and the bank's going to evaluate. The bank may have it may be a startup, but the bank may have a relationship with the startup in the sense that maybe there's someone that's backing the startup. Maybe the one entity backing the startup saying, look, it's a startup, but I've put $10 million in there, and I, Mr. Banker, have $100 million in your bank, so I want you to issue a letter of credit. I'm not going to guarantee it, but we've had a banking relationship. I want you to issue a letter of credit to them at a reasonable cost.
So now let's say that the tenant can't pay, then what? Does the letter of credit, the tenant can't pay.
If the tenant defaults under its obligations, under the lease, then I will have negotiated a lease clause that requires the tenant to deliver to me a letter of credit, which is, it's called Evergreen, which every year has to be renewed. And that letter of credit, it's going to say, and it says both in the lease and with the bank, it says that all I need to do is present that letter of credit to the bank, along with a statement that says tenant is in default. And based on those two pieces of paper, the letter of credit and the statement of certificate that the tenant is in default, I present that, and then I'm entitled to get whatever the amount is that I'm claiming.
Is it a lump sum amount, or is it like an annuity over a certain amount of time?
You can have multiple draws under a letter of credit, but it's really, what is the default? If the tenant has defaulted, in 3 months rent, and that's $100,000, I can present the letter of credit for up to $100,000. I can't present the letter of credit for the next 5 years of rent. I got to wait till he's in default.
It's mitigating something.
Right.
But maybe not the whole remaining lease payment.
Well, but then when the letter of credit runs out, because you're not going to get a letter of credit to cover the remaining term of the lease, if the tenant's still in default, then the tenant will get kicked out. The point is, no landlord can guarantee that any tenant is going to stay solvent and pay forever. No, but sure. you got to have some protection. So if you get a 5-year lease,
insurance.
If you got a 5-year lease and you got a year or two's letter of credit, okay, so you got a couple years out of it, and then if the entity goes solvent, then you go elsewhere.
Gotcha. And so,
but a landlord actually prefers a letter of credit to a cash security deposit, because there are bankruptcy implications to a cash security deposit. Okay, the letter of credit, the letter of credit is an agreement between the bank and the landlord.
And the landlord, not
so if
the
tenant goes bankrupt,
tenant.
it doesn't fall into the estate of the bankrupt entity. Well, I control the deposit, but the bankruptcy court will only let me apply. If a tenant goes bankrupt, there's a formula. It's sort of the greater of 1 year or 15% of the remaining balance of the rent.
Security deposit and guarantees. What's the uniqueness of that?
Well, the security deposit is the item or issue that the landlord requires. The tenant can satisfy the security deposit by either giving a cash security deposit or the letter of credit.
Are you seeing a lot of security deposit on net lease deals? No. More multi-tenant centers, right?
Well, if you have a triple net lease, and those are being sold in the marketplace, typically there's a Walgreens or a CVS or something behind it. There's a credit behind it. The landlord and the lender, both the landlord and the lender know there's a good credit there. So I may want some modest security deposit, but basically I'm relying on the credit of CVS, Walmart, or whoever to pay the rent. So you don't necessarily see
But on a smaller credit, you probably want a deposit.
Yes.
And what would that deposit go towards if it's, I guess, if they take a hike on you to redo the building, fix up the building?
The security deposit, if the clause is drafted properly by the landlord, then it would cover, the security deposit would be able to be applied to rent, to additional rent, to any costs that can be shown to flow from the tenant's default. So if the tenant has a party in the premises and they ruin 3 walls, okay,
Right.
and the tenant leaves, I can apply the security deposit to the damage that the
I
tenant has
see.
caused.
How much rent do you normally try to get, or what's a normal?
So
All states are probably different legally,
well,
right?
it's not even states. It's a matter of business analysis and judgment. You look, you want to in a situation. Let's just assume we're talking about a situation where there's credit issues. You certainly want to get a year. You know,
About
on
a
a
year
typical
deposit.
typical 5-year lease, you're going to want to get
a year of
a
rent
year.
as a deposit.
Yes. Now,
Okay.
if you get a year and a half, you get but a year is where a year plus is where it falls out.
Okay. And how about guarantee? How does that work?
A guarantee is mainly it's the same concept that you, instead of a letter of credit, if you have a letter of credit costs, right?
Yeah.
So maybe 2%, 3%. If it's a startup, it may be a lot.
But what do
more.
I care? The tenant's paying for it.
No, but I'm saying that. But the tenant cares.
The tenant cares. They may not want to do it.
The tenant may
Okay.
not have the cash to put up. The
Okay.
tenant may not have the cash to put in the bank
So
to get a letter of credit.
so you get somebody with a strong balance sheet that guarantees it. Okay.
And there are 3 types of guarantees, and this is
Oh,
very
that I've never known. Okay.
There are
Go
3
ahead.
types of guarantees. This is very important.
Okay.
This is very important. This is worth you knowing. Okay. There is a guarantee
Okay.
of performance.
Okay. Guarantee of performance.
There is a guarantee of payment, and there is a guarantee of collections. And it's a step down ladder. If I'm a landlord and you're not smart enough, I'm going to say, or if I have the leverage, I'm going to say I want to guarantee a performance, which means that I want Mr. Henry Jones to guarantee not only the rent, not only the collection of the rent, but that you will perform, that if you cause damage, that you'll repair it, that if you have a bank vault there that has to be removed, that you'll remove it. And if you don't do it, I, the landlord, will do it, and I'll charge you for it, and you have the obligation under the performance.
What is pretty standard?
So that's performance.
What's standard, though? Like if I'm looking at most deals, is there any standardization?
Well, it's
when you're a lawyer and you look at guarantee agreement, is there any kind of standard? No.
If I'm representing the tenant, I'm going to say I don't want to.
I don't want to do
performance.
That. Okay.
I'll guarantee payment, which is if he doesn't. He'd actually. You want to go even a step lower. And you don't get it that often. You want to say I don't want to guarantee payment. I want. You get past performance. You get the payment and collection issue. If I'm guaranteeing payment, that means if the tenant doesn't pay, I have to pay. If I'm the tenant, I want to be a step below that if I'm the guarantor. I just want to guarantee collection. So if he doesn't pay and you can't collect by whatever means or avenue, then I, as a guarantor, guarantee the collection of that.
I see.
That's a step below. But either payment or collection, even though I would like to limit it to payment for raising the tenant, at least those are much better than performance. You don't want to have obligations.
So who do you want to deal with? Will you deal with tenants or landlords or both? What's your preferred client?
You know what?
It doesn't matter.
I like to represent the good guy. Whoever's
in the right.
Whoever's prepared to have a good, strong attorney-client relationship and needs my assistance, I'm there ready to help.
So how can somebody reach you, Mark? And where are you at? You're in...
I am at Sills Cummis Gross.
But what city are you? You're in New York?
New York City and New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Where's your office?
Regional.
Are you in Manhattan?
I have 2. I have an office in New York City at Park and 41st, and I have an office in Newark in the Legal Center, which is a building
So I told you I'm going to be in Columbus Circle.
That's right.
For Thanksgiving. I may see you. I'm going to be looking up. Where is Mark?
17 streets away. So I am at Mark Levenson. It's M Levenson, MLEVENSON at sillscummis.com.
What's your direct line?
SILLSCUMMIS.com 973 643 5756.
So somebody would call you. You'll deal with tenants. You'll deal with landlords.
I'll deal with lenders. We represent a lot of lenders.
Oh, okay. So you'd also to make lenders stronger with these guarantee agreements.
I represent
enhance them, give them ideas,
right, or represent
to mitigate
them.
their risk.
They typically have form loan documents, some of which we've created for them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mark.
My
Enjoy
pleasure,
the rest
Chris.
of the event.
You're lucky you get to be out here.
I know. I
finished my speaking, so I'm done now. I'm good to go.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris Marabella with Mark here at ICSC Law Conference. If you have any questions about letters of credit, guarantees, deposits, Mark's your guy. He spoke here at ICSC. and give him a call. Check it out. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you,
Enjoy
Chris.
your time
Have a
here
great
in San
weekend.
Diego. Chris Marabella. This is Chris Marabella. Hey, this is Chris with Marabella Commercial Finance. Chris Marabella. This is Chris Marabella. Hey, this is Chris with Marabella Commercial Finance.